Hi there. We are back with another episode of the Houston Bound Podcast, your ultimate guide to moving to the heart of Texas. I am Chase Taylor, and this is my co-host, Mandy Poff.
Hello. Mandy here.
And today we have a special guest, Dr. Mark Ruffin, in the house.
Thank y'all for having me. I appreciate it.
Yes. Welcome, Dr. Ruffin. How are you?
I'm doing great. How are y'all?
Good.
Doing well.
Wonderful.
Can you tell us a bit about yourself? And,
Absolutely. First of all, thank y'all so much. Just the invitation to engage in dialogue with you guys about very important topics, our kids and our schools. And please, by all means, feel free to call me Mark. Dr. Ruffin is one of those things that it still doesn't always feel right for me. I never had the ambition or plan in my life to be a superintendent and to go get a doctorate and all those things. It's just the way that, opportunities are presented to me. And I'm a big believer in walking by faith and stepping out in faith. And that's what's done. And that's what I've done in my life. And that's why myself and my wife and my 3 boys are now here in Montgomery. We got in Montgomery ISD in January of last year. So we're excited to be here.
That's awesome. What brought you here?
So obviously the amazing schools, right? A huge attractant to not just me, but as y'all know in y'all's industry, that our school district is a huge draw to people wanting to be in Montgomery and Montgomery ISD. And so for me, an opportunity to lead a school district that is as prestigious as Montgomery ISD, as closely aligned with my values and my beliefs as Montgomery, in a place that I just mentioned, I've got 3 boys. They're 4, 7, and 10. One of the most exciting things for me as a dad and also as a superintendent is the fact that there's nothing that my kids would be interested in that we can't, as a district, just put in front of them in some way, shape, or form, to engage them, to excite them, to foster their creativity and their passion for learning. So that was a big draw.
Yeah, I agree. So whenever I was searching schools, Montgomery ISD was always the top ranked. It was always, well, there's these schools and then there's Montgomery ISD.
Exactly. Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's the top of the top. That's what we tell a lot of our buyers that are coming from out of state, especially if that's important to them, then Montgomery ISD is where it's at. So where were you before this?
So we moved from a small district called Norman G. ISD. It's outside of College Station. Very small district. We had about 650 kids within the school district.
Oh my gosh.
Very small.
Wow.
And so getting to Montgomery ISD was obviously a jump and a period of acclimation for myself and for my kids and my family. But I will say, of all of the nervousness or excitement, it all just kind of floated away when you walk into our classrooms and walk into our buildings, and you realize that the size of the district is one thing, but when you walk into each one of our campuses and they all feel unique and special, the 4 walls of our schools are the same. It doesn't matter if you're in a small district or a large district. And what's so special to me to realize is the people within those 4 walls are amazing people, and they're educators and they're staff folks that have hearts for kids. And one thing that we talk a lot about in Montgomery ISD is this idea that we want to be the premier school district in Texas. And part of that is understanding that regardless of what your role is, position is, title is, you stand to make an impact in our kids' lives. And that has been a rewarding component to getting to know Montgomery ISD and our people and our staff.
Yeah, this is our first year at Stewart Creek Elementary, and I will say, just walking in, there is an absolute energy that you can feel with love and just total appreciation and excitement. And I can feel it. I love it. I mean, every day that I go through the car rider line, I'm like, I love this school so much. So
that's so good to know. And I'll tell you this quick story. First day of school this year in August, I made a point to go to every single one of our campuses. And I wanted to meet with all of our brand new first day on the job, baby teachers, never taught before, never been in a classroom. And so we did that, and we went around and we took pictures with like a little printout chalkboard, my first day of making an impact. And we went back and framed those and gave it back to the teachers as a gift. But I ran into a teacher actually at MES who was not brand new to teaching, but brand new to Montgomery. And she couldn't get through how her day was. I said, well, how's your day? And she couldn't get through like 2 sentences without just crying. She's like, I came from a different district. I'm not going to say the name of the district, but I came from a different district and I'm here now. And I've never been in a place where just the culture radiates the fact that everyone here cares for kids. Yes. And so as a superintendent and all of the things that come with that, those moments are really special to hold on to. And it is a testament to the fact that all of our campuses are unique and different, but they all have that same consistent component to it of just the amazing people that work with our kids.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel that way as a parent for sure.
That's amazing that you took the time to go around and do that. They'll never forget that. So I love it. What are we here to talk about, Mandy? I'm going to let you take over this part.
Well, I think that's a really good lead in because I actually met Mr. Ruffin, Dr. Ruffin, which I'll call you Mark now because that's a little bit more comfortable. So I met Mark at a PTO meeting at Stewart Creek Elementary, and he explained Proposition A to me. And when he explained it to me, I realized that this is an absolute topic that we need to get out into the community because it is vital. The first thing I want to start before we get into Proposition A is there's a lot of residents in Montgomery County and Montgomery that do not have children in the district. So before we get into what Proposition A is, can you tell those residents and listeners why they want to continue listening? What does it do for them?
Absolutely. So we talked about what brought me here, what brought you here into Montgomery ISD, and a huge draw of that is our schools. Public education is, in my opinion, is the backbone of our communities. And whether it's Prop A or whether it's just understanding the level of service and education that your local school district is providing your kids or your kids in your community, it's vitally important. As we know that property values within this county have continued to increase and grow. And no offense to the Home Depots of the world or the Lupe Tortillas of the world, which I'm excited to eat at.
Right.
Our property values don't necessarily increase because of those.
No, they come to us because we have the property values increasing.
Exactly. And the school district is a big draw of that. And so as a resident, as someone that maybe not have kids or grandkids within the school district, it is important to be engaged in the work that your school districts are doing around you. One, because we could use all the help we get. You know, we really are service minded and we want to serve our communities and our people. And that's not just the folks in our buildings. We want our secondary students at the high school and junior highs to be out in the communities, finding ways to serve, whether that's at local churches or helping out at different nonprofit organizations, whatever it might be. I would say that's a critically important reason that everyone within our district needs to be engaged, understanding of the work we're doing. And second of all, because I'm really proud of it. I'm really proud of it. And I think it would make a lot of people proud too, to know the people, first of all, that we have within this district and know the work that's being done.
Yeah. When you did Proposition A for the PTO meeting, I really learned a lot about the differences between our schools and other districts. I learned a lot of the intricacies that you offer or that our district offers that are now at risk. So why don't you tell us a little bit about Proposition A and the repercussions of it not passing?
Sure. And so I'll preface all that with just making sure that listeners understand that my job as the superintendent is not to advocate one way or the other for Proposition A, but it's just to inform and educate. We do have a website that's available. It's got a lot of information on it with an FAQ on there also. So I'll be happy to point anybody back there.
Put that into the show notes.
It'll be in the show notes.
Thank you very much. But it is important for us to educate our stakeholders because the things within our public education funding formulas, there's not a whole lot of things that we can control with expenditures and revenues, but what we can control is putting this opportunity in the hands of our voters, educating them on what the facts are, educating them on what the outlook of our school district may be if we are not able to increase local revenues, and then allow them to weigh in and vote however their heart desires. But the financial facts of where we are as a district is we're in a $4.3 million hole this year. So we're in a deficit budget.
How does that affect us being premier?
So that's a great question. And going into this fiscal year, we cut $800,000 out of our budget with the intention of trying not to impact our four walls of our classrooms. I don't want my kids, I don't want your kids feeling the fact that we're in a financial bind. And we were able to do that going into this school year. But I'll tell you right now, we're making decisions today, yesterday, tomorrow, that are impacting our people and our programs and our kids because we're not able to add staff in areas that we could really use extra staff in.
I know whenever you did your presentation, there were so many programs that you had mentioned that Montgomery ISD offers that not all districts offer. I know our broker of our office, she has a dual language class that one of her very little children is in. And so just starting them early in that manner is so important. But tell us a little bit about the programs that we offer as a district that you're not going to find anywhere that are also at risk.
Yeah. So the at-risk component is there because if we don't increase our local funding, and Prop A provides $5.5 million of new funding this fiscal year and every fiscal year thereafter, so it's in perpetuity. If we're not able to increase our funding, we have to decrease our deficit, right? We can't go into next school year with a $4 million deficit. And so the only way to decrease that size of a deficit is unfortunately through people. And a lot of those programs we talked about take people to run. There are minimum requirements through the state of Texas that we have to legally provide our students based on their needs. And what Montgomery ISD has just made standard is above the legal minimum requirement. The dual language program is a great example of that. We have to offer our emerging bilingual students some level of bilingual services, but we don't have to have the full immersive dual language program that we have at MES. And I think I've seen firsthand, and others that are in that program have seen the uniqueness of it and have seen the exposure that their kids get to foundational components of language that will be with them for the rest of their lives. So yes, the dual language program is one of those that we've had to have that discussion about.
I think a very hot topic right now for parents is safety and the safety of their children while inside of those four walls. I know that Montgomery ISD goes above and beyond for safety as well. Can you talk about what our safety procedures are and then what the bare minimum standard for the state of Texas is?
Thank you. Great question. So House Bill 3 was adopted last session, and it requires every school district, every campus to have one armed officer on campus. And we do that. We check that box. But we go beyond that because at the high school level, we have two officers on each one of our campuses. And I kind of make this joke from time to time, but I don't know the last time y'all have been on a high school campus, but those kids are now all like 6'6" and like 220. They're all huge. I don't know when people became giants, but our new generation are all giants. But with the layout of our campuses and as wide and as spread out as they are, with the number of high school kids that we have on those campuses, Montgomery ISD has always staffed two officers on those campuses. Again, our requirement through House Bill 3 is we only have to staff one. They do so much more than just their presence in the building, though, and this is a sensitive subject. And going back to the conversation earlier about why should other people care, our officers also help direct traffic in the mornings for car rider lines and pickup lines. And that is a component that spills out into our county roads and into our city streets. And that does cause complications and challenges. And so as reductions would be made to decrease our deficit, those would also be considerations that would likely have an impact. Things like the car rider lines. You mentioned transportation and the fact that we bus 4,500 kids a day.
I was just actually going to touch on that. Now, you had mentioned public transportation for children is not required. This is a service that Montgomery ISD offers. So tell us a little bit more about that.
That's a big misconception that we don't actually have to bus any students. I say that. There's students that qualify with special education services and things that we do. But as a general service, transportation is not required by TEA. That being said, a lot of school districts will set up their bus transportation so that if you live within a mile or 2 miles of the campus, you're not eligible to ride a bus. You got to get there by yourself. We have never established that. So we offer transportation to all of our students. Absent additional funding, bus stops, the number of drivers that we can afford to have out on the roads would likely be reduced by implementing some of those radiuses. Compounding issue there is now some of those 4,300 kids that are on our buses every day are now having to be in our car rider lines, further compounding that issue and that problem.
Yeah. So those who are in the community without children will really benefit from Prop A by maintaining those funds.
Absolutely.
And keeping those car riders off of the streets and being able to free up that traffic. I think that's great. Okay. So we've kind of talked about how it impacts the surrounding residents who are not actually affiliated with the school. Talk to us about how this is going to impact the student's day and the teacher's ability to teach.
So there's obviously the impact that we can discuss if it is successful and what those additional revenues do. Obviously, we've got 3 funding priorities within Prop A: recruit and retain our staff, student programs, and safety and security. If it is successful, then we have $5.5 additional million of revenue that offsets that $4 million deficit and gives us some additional capacity to recruit and retain our teachers and our staff and maintain and competitive compensation packages for those people. On the flip side of that, if it doesn't pass, then it's reducing a $4 million deficit going into next school year. And so we have brought up specific examples. Our students benefit from interventionists that they can work hand in hand with. They benefit from behavioral specialists that they can work hand in hand with.
Can you tell us a little bit more about those 2 that you just mentioned? I think those are critical for parents and residents to understand.
Yeah. So academic interventionists, there are certified teachers that can float from classroom to classroom, and they might have a designated list of 60 kids, 70 kids that they work with throughout the day, and they go in and they pull those kids out and do small group with them, maybe one-on-one, maybe small group, maybe teacher with 2 or 3 kids. And that not only benefits the student, but the teacher in the classroom now has someone else assisting these students with higher tiered level of support and intervention, continue to make progress and grow them academically. And same thing on the behavioral side of things. We've got students that have different challenges behaviorally, and some can be more difficult to manage from a teacher standpoint. And so we've got behavioral specialists that can come alongside our teachers and those youngins and help share insight and approaches that might help de-escalate situations and might help redirect those kids to being more productive in the classroom. But again, all of those are support positions that are outside of the classroom that, if we cannot increase our local revenues, would unfortunately be subject to either reduction in force or reducing those positions through acclimation through other areas.
Yeah, and I really feel like these are the intricacies that actually make Montgomery ISD premier. They're the reason that parents want to be in this district. They are the reason that we do keep these property values up and continuing to rise, is because of all of these small things that we do to really benefit and nurture these children inside of these 4 walls. So
Absolutely. So what do we do? How do we?
Yeah. So give us just a brief overview. What is Prop A? how does it impact the household?
Yes. Thank you. So like I've mentioned, it generates $5.5 million of revenue this fiscal year and every fiscal year thereafter. Before a school district can call for a tax rate election, the Board of Trustees has to do what's called an efficiency audit, which means they hire a third-party auditor to come in and say, hey, we're going to compare your district expenditures and revenues to 10 districts like you. And that's a good thing, right? Because it forces us to look in the mirror first before we go to our taxpayers and just, at the drop of a hat say, hey, we think we should raise the revenues here and we think we should increase the tax rate. So that efficiency audit is on our website, and it confirmed what we already knew as a district, is that we're lean. We receive $1,100 less per kid than our peer districts. We spend less in instructional costs, in extracurricular costs, and leadership costs, and campus administration costs. But the the Prop A ends up being a 5-cent tax rate increase, coming off of a tax year that dropped the tax rate 18 cents. So a lot of our stakeholders may not know that, but from last tax year, the tax rate dropped 18 cents with the addition of the homestead exemption increasing to $100,000. So of that 18 cents that fell last year, we're asking to regain 5 of those pennies. And as I mentioned, those three funding priorities, and the impact on a monthly basis is about $9 for a home valued at $350,000. And then you can just kind of do the math to calculate up from there. But it's very important, again, that we educate our stakeholders on the impact and the opportunities that may be available if it passes, but that we make sure that we're painting a clear picture of the decisions that will have to be made if we're not able to increase our local revenues.
Mm-hmm. I mean, $9 a household is, for me, it's an obvious choice.
It should be worth it. That's worth it.
Right. Yeah.
Even for me without children, I'm like, this is worth it. This is worth it for all of us.
Mm-hmm. I mean, it's the future. It's our next generation of
It's our community.
Of adults. It's our community. It's everything. And since we had that reduction, we're asking for 5 cents back. That is very, very impactful.
Absolutely. So how can voters prepare to vote for Prop A?
So we, like I mentioned, you guys said you'd put the link to our website in the notes. I really appreciate that. That's a great opportunity there. As a district, we've got a communications team. They are small, but they are mighty. They are doing a great job of getting as much information out as we possibly can, making sure that we're providing opportunities to have some Q&A sessions. Again, it's our job to make sure people get to the polls in November or in early voting and know and have the information they need to vote however their heart desires. But I will say that as some of our listeners may have just moved to the area, a reminder to update your driver's license and get registered to vote.
Both of us.
There you go.
Me. I need to
There you go. Guilty as charged. And that deadline is October 7th to make sure that you're registered to vote. And so that's in like 2 weeks, ladies.
Mm-hmm. Right.
I'm glad that you mentioned the deadline.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yep. So we can register. Okay. So we need to update our driver's license. We need to register to vote. Is there anything else that we need to do? Is there any homework that our listeners should do? You mentioned going to the website. Is there any other information that they can find online, or is the website the best place?
The website's the best place. We have a Facebook page. A lot of information goes out on our social media. If people want to be engaged in getting the message out about Prop A, some people are more or less inclined to share things that are, politically natured. Anything that Montgomery ISD puts out will be factual based. So if they're like, hey, I'm fine sharing something, but I'm not comfortable telling someone how to vote, perfectly fine. We can't do that anyway. Mm-hmm. So anything that you see that's posted by Montgomery ISD can be shared and reshared without the concern of feeling like you're pushing something on somebody, because that's the basis of how we have to communicate.
Well, we definitely can encourage our listeners to vote for Prop A, because I personally will be voting for the benefit of my children, the children in the district,
Absolutely.
and of course for the property values. That's what we stand for as a real estate company, is making sure people make money in real estate. And this is a great way to do it. You're having a 5 cent increase to probably increase your home, $50,000 in the next 2 years.
Right. It's definitely going to benefit homeowners. Mm-hmm. So we support that as well as realtors. So,
okay. So we've talked about how the residents can help push. Mm-hmm. We've talked about how they can prepare. Is there any other way to get involved? Are there any groups that are meeting, or any other additional town meetings that you'll have, town halls?
So we just had a town hall last night. It was very well attended, had great question and answer sessions in there. In terms of any other groups, that would really just need to be done on a homework basis, maybe on y'all's part, of anybody that might be on a more proactive or on one side or the other of Prop A. Not something I can directly connect folks with. But in general, it doesn't matter if it's about Prop A. We've started the whole conversation off with, why does it matter? It matters to know what's happening in our schools. It matters to know the challenges, the successes. It matters to know why, when a development is put in, the first billboard goes up and the first bullet on there is zoned to MISD schools. It matters to know why that is. And so I would encourage everybody about Prop A, about anything else, be engaged in the work that's happening in your schools. And if you have a willingness to volunteer or we're building a new CTE center that's going to be unbelievable. And that's a whole nother topic. When we open that thing up, I'd love to come back on and share that with y'all. But just be engaged, be informed and educated about what's happening.
Now, you did mention the new center that's being built. I want you to explain to our listeners the difference between Prop A and what was approved there.
Thank you very much. So Prop A is not a bond election. The bond election we passed in 2022 was for $326 million, and it did not raise the tax rate at all. Mm-hmm. And I think that's another thing that we've kind of glassed over some a little bit, is that through the passage of that bond, we've been able to build Creekside Elementary. We've opened that in August. We've been able to renovate campuses throughout our district, with some scheduled to get more renovations done this summer. We've been able to add playgrounds. We've been able to start construction on our Career and Tech Center. But all of those funds cannot be touched for any other purpose or reason than build buildings, buy land, capital improvement projects, renovations. So all of that $326 million, we can't just say, hey, well, let's use some of that over here where we're $4 million short. It's not how our tax rate allows us to do things. So Prop A impacts the maintenance and operations side of our budget, the M&O tax rate. And that's where the revenues are generated that allow us to pay our electrical bill, pay for our salaries and our benefits to our people. Interesting challenge that we've had is coupled with, and why we're in this financial challenge is, we receive the same money per student now than we did in 2019.
That is insane to me.
Yeah. And you couple that with inflation and rising costs. Our insurance costs alone have increased over $750,000 since 2019.
Like mine have too.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And so we face all of those rising expenditures and costs also, without the ability to go hustle and make more money and increase revenues through extra efforts or work here and there. We're kind of limited on what we can control there.
Yeah, I mean, this is so important for our listeners and our community to really understand what this Proposition A is going to do for everyone.
Absolutely. Well, I think with that, we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. That was amazing information. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Thank you for being our very first special guest, Mark. It was a pleasure having you.
Thank you so much. I appreciate
it. So everybody, please go register to vote, update your driver's license. Please vote for Proposition A. This is only going to benefit everyone in our area and continue to be the reason that Montgomery County was the #1 fastest growing county in America in very recent years. So you guys make sure that you vote. And if you have any questions, please check out the show notes, go to the website, or of course you can always message Chase and I directly.
Yes, you can. Thank you so much for listening, and we'll sign off with that.